Today's episode is all about what does it take to be successful? But before you ask that question, you've got to know what success means to you. Do you know what success means to you? Let's see if we can find out today. This week's episode is brought to you by my Facebook group, Turning Readers into Writers. This month, August, is called the Author Accelerator and it's dedicated to all beginner writers. Throughout August, I have experts coming in to talk to you about not only how to write a book, but also how you can enhance your writing life. For example, at the same time as learning how to write a thriller with J.S. Ellis or a romance novel with Lasarina McMaster, you can explore strategies to make more time in your life for your writing with Danny Thompson. If you need tools to build your creative confidence, Jackie Letran can help. Perhaps you're interested in meditation or even in manifestation, then Sue Maisano and Candice Cherie can help guide you. Head on over to my Facebook group, Turning Readers into Writers, and throughout the month of August, you will have free access to all this expertise. Don't miss the opportunity to pick their brains and get what you need to take your writing life one step further. So what does it take to be successful, and what does success mean to you? As I said in the introduction, before you ask that question, you must first of all know what success means to you. Is success attending a weekly class in your local area, or is success finishing a first draft and leaving it there? Or perhaps success is drafting and redrafting before either finding an agent or publishing your book. But once you know what your idea of success is, then the next step is to be intentional about your writing. And something that we all struggle with is comparisonitis. That's one of the things that can stop us from being intentional and reaching our success threshold, whatever that may be. Because let's be honest, it's scary when you first start writing. You have such high expectations of yourself that often there's no way that really you can live up to those high expectations, not in the early stages of your career. And when you set yourself up with very high expectations, you really are setting yourself up for failure, because you are pitting yourself against well-established authors who have been writing possibly for decades, writers whose books have been edited time and time again before they hit the market. And remember too that agented authors, agented novelists, they have to get buy-in from their agent before they even start writing the book. So sometimes they will be asked to provide the synopsis for 2 or 3 potential stories, and then the agent will decide which one is the most commercially viable, and then the writer will go ahead and write the book. You and I, we do not have the power of an agent to determine what we should be writing before we even write it. Instead, you are writing stories that you enjoy reading. You are writing what you love. So how can you compare yourself to a novelist who has that kind of commercial clout behind them? Well, the simple answer is you can't, and so you mustn't. You shouldn't. The first thing you've got to do if you want to be successful really is to stop comparing yourself to your literary heroes. And if you do that, you will immediately remove all of the pressure, because let's be honest, we simply cannot compete with them. Not yet, anyway. So comparisonitis is one of the first things you've got to overcome if you want to be successful in any area of your creative life. The second thing that you've got to do is to face your fears. So once you've stopped comparing yourself to those established authors, it's time to face your internal fears, those feelings of vulnerability, those feelings that kind of wipe out any faith that you once had in yourself before you started writing. Because let's face it, what's the worst that can happen if you write a book? Well, the worst that can happen is you don't find an agent for this particular manuscript. The worst that can happen is that you decide not to publish it once you've finished it. Or even more than that, you decide to press publish, but nobody buys it. but none of these things will kill you. You know, you might get a little bit embarrassed if nobody buys your book, although I doubt that will happen, but it's better than being a famous author who gets a really bad review in the national press, surely. Because even if all of these things do happen, even if you don't get an agent for this particular manuscript, even if you decide it's not worth publishing, or even if you do publish it and nobody buys it, you've got to stop seeing that as a negative thing. And I encourage you to reframe it as a positive experience, because with every manuscript you write, you are improving your craft and you're setting yourself up for future success. So I want to encourage you to not make any more apologies for being where you are in your writer journey. Before I made the commitment to write my first novel, I was very apologetic for my writing. I sort of mumbled the fact that I was a writer, and I did a little bit of creative writing, was how I described it. So really, before I'd even written my first book, I was already telling myself that I wasn't good enough and I didn't have anything to be proud of. And then at the end of the first draft I'd written, I was equally convinced that it wasn't very good and I should just start again. I was embarrassed by what I'd written. I didn't give myself the chance to work on that writing, to work on that manuscript and to improve it. Instead, I squirreled it away and I tried to forget about it, you know, as if my thoughts and my stories and the characters in my head were unworthy. But I encourage you to not do this. I encourage you to stop apologising for your writing. I urge you to accept that and be proud of the fact that you are at the beginning of your journey. You're just at the very start, and there is so much fun and a lot of challenges ahead, just like in your novel. You're going to have some conflict as you go along, just like your character does. But just like in your books, you're going to have a very, very satisfactory ending. So I want you to stop feeling unworthy just because you're starting your journey. You have stories to tell and they are worth telling, and only you can tell them. So acknowledge, accept that you're at the beginning of this journey. I mean, even though I'm a few years in now, I still think of myself as being at the beginning of this journey. And what a great place to be, because let's be honest, the only way we can go is up. And that is super, super exciting. At the moment, you know, being at the beginning, you don't have the pressure of being at the top of that literary ladder and the pressures that there are to stay there. You don't have to justify all the publicity and expense that is placed upon you and your book. Being at this stage of your writing career gives you an enormous amount of freedom, and you can write what you want, you can write what you want, and you can be as playful as you want, because at this stage, nobody's watching. Nobody's watching the mistakes and the curiosity that you show in your writing. I want you to reduce the overwhelm that you feel. Because I want you to start stepping up to the plate. You know, you're facing your fears, you're stopping comparing yourself to other people, and you're getting your manuscript finished. And this is something that you won't regret, I absolutely promise. There are a lot of moving parts to a novel, and this can feel intimidating, this can feel overwhelming when you try to put them all together. But when you are organised with your time, when you are intentional with your writing, you can reduce this level of overwhelm. You can reduce the intimidation you feel, because once you've organised the time and you know what you're writing, you know what needs to be done. You'll know what needs to be included in your story. You will discover that you actually know how to write a story. And you're thinking, well, how do you know this, Emma? Well, I know this because I know you're a reader. I know that you have read millions of words, possibly even thousands of books in your lifetime. And for this reason, I know you know how to write a compelling story. The difficulty right now, the difficulty with being at the beginning of your journey, is that you don't yet trust yourself. But I'm going to urge you again to trust yourself, because if you want to be successful, you need to trust your instincts and your talent, because if you don't, nobody else will. If you want to take the next step with your writing life, trust in your instincts and trust in your talent. And that is how you will get to the next step. That's how you will get to finish your manuscript. And remember, this first manuscript, this first draft, it's a rough draft. It's not meant to be a perfect product. And that's the hardest bit, you know. Writing that first draft can be the hardest bit. But once you've done it, once you've got that story down on paper, well, you're off to the races. Because now you have something to edit. Now you have something to work on. Now you have something to improve. And this is where the magic happens. So trust yourself and get that first draft written. Now you may be wondering, well, how do I trust myself? How do I get that first draft written? And it comes back to this idea of what we mentioned at the beginning of what is success? You know, what does it mean to you? What are you working towards? And once you know what you're working towards, you can set your intentions accordingly and you can set your time commitments accordingly. So this is not writing as and when the mood takes you, but it's being organised and happy in your work. So, you know, if you're a plotter, this means plotting out your novel, and that might simply be a list of bullet points. Or it could be like P.D. James. P.D. James was at the other extreme, and her plots were so detailed, so thorough, that by the time she had finished, she'd more or less written the novel. And so all she had to do really was kind of join the dots and make the story cohesive. If you're a discovery writer, it's all about having an idea of your character and a feel for what might happen in that story. And even though you don't know exactly what's going to take place, you do have a rough idea. So maybe you have a character in mind. Well, that character, you need to understand that person very well and know how they will react in all sorts of tough situations you're going to put them in. What about where your story is taking place? You need to set time aside to think about that. Because often where the story takes place can be a big part of your novel, and some people even describe the setting of their novel as another character. Or for you, is it just the backdrop of the story? These are elements of storytelling that you need to be intentional with. You need to think about the time that you're putting into it, what it's going to look like on a weekly or a daily basis for your writing. And when you think about the bigger picture, when you think about how your week is going to shape out, when you think about being intentional with your writing and being organized with your writing, you are putting yourself in such a better position for success. So, in conclusion, I want you to really think about what success means for you. Think about what you want for your writing and for yourself. You know, are you writing just for a hobby? Is that why you're writing? Or do you have ambitions for your writing? Perhaps you want to earn an income from your writing. And if you do, what will that income do for you? Will it pay down your mortgage? Will it pay for holidays? Or maybe you just want to pay off some of your credit card. There are a myriad reasons that you might want to write a book. So, you know, do think about what success means for you and what you will need to do to be successful. So imagine putting all of these moving parts into order, you know, the time management, what you're going to be writing. And when you put them in place, then you're going to reduce the overwhelm. Just naturally, it's going to happen. You'll reduce it because you know what you're doing with the time that you're writing. And this will leave you free to write the book that you want. Now, to help you put these moving parts in place, I've got a free checklist for you. And it's super simple, and you can use it either before you start writing your book so that you know you've got everything in place, or you can use it during the editing phase to just kind of guarantee that you've included all the key elements below. You can get your free copy by going to emmadesi.com/story checklist, and you'll be able to download it straight away. All right, I hope this was useful for you. I hope it's given you something to think about, rather than just having this big idea of a book in your head, but that you understand why you want to do it, that why it's important to you, because that will come in that will become so important as you progress through the manuscript and you're feeling a bit disheartened and it all feels very hard and it all feels overwhelming. If you can think back to why you're doing this, why you want the book written, why you want to be a writer, then that will really spur you on to be consistent and intentional with your writing time, and it will help make sure that you get to the end. All right, thank you for that, and I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found that helpful and inspirational. Now, don't forget to come on over to Facebook and join my group, Turning Readers into Writers. It is especially for you if you are a beginner writer who is looking to write their first novel. If you join the group, you will also find a free cheat sheet there called 3 Secret Hacks to Write with Consistency. So go to emmadesi.com/turning readers into writers, hit join. Can't wait to see you in there. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.